Midlife gets a bad rap. People call it a crisis, but really it can be clarity. It's that point where you look around and you realize that the status quo just doesn't work anymore. The career, the pace, even the version of success that you've been chasing, it's time to change the rules and start living on your terms. That's what my podcast is about. Over the past year, I've had conversations with people who've had done exactly that, who stopped someone else's definition of success and started to build a life that actually fits who they are now. In the next few episodes, I'll be sharing some of those moments again, like Larry Kihlstadius on freedom and leadership, Paul Hatch on courage and reinvention, Kim Mustin on purpose and caregiving, and Mike Mao on finding meaning through loss and change. These stories are real, and they are a reminder that midlife isn't an ending, it's a turning point. Thank you for being part of the first year. Here's whatever comes next.
Life goals are simple for me. It's number one, did I raise thriving kids? Now, the word thriving does not mean rich kids. It means thriving. It means, are they happy and enjoying life and have a positive outlook on life, which I can check that box, at least for now in their lives. I mean, second piece, professional legacy. Have I touched lives that help people be better at the goals they want to achieve? My legacy is always leave it better. Find people, leave them better. And then finally, freedom defined is the ability to do the things I want to do at the level I care about doing them and have the time to do them. And time is actually the most important factor in that little equation, because lots of people have lots of money, but their lives are so time compressed that even when they go on what most people would define as an amazing vacation, they're distracted by work. They're on your phone. They're answering emails. They're answering text messages. They're calling people. They're not in the moment, or they've created this bubble around themselves where that bubble they might as well not even be in this amazing environment because they could be anywhere. They're not actually experiencing that environment.
If you can't lead by example and if you can't bring people along the journey and you can't be vulnerable, people are not going to like you and they're not going to follow you if they don't like you.
And I think then continuing forward, becoming a better teammate and really understanding, and this is the big lesson of this, is relationships matter. Relationships are going to be the key to everything. And it's something I've actually coached my kids on through life, is saying, everything happens in life through relationships. You watch what happens. It's not necessarily the skill sets. It's not how smart you are. Mostly it's the relationships you build.
A lot of my listeners are trying to do a transition, or maybe they are realizing that the status quo no longer works for them. How did you redefine your why? And then how did it lead you to live the way that you live today?
Early in my life, I was 100% around freedom. And what freedom is shifted. The definition of freedom shifted. Freedom in the beginning was, I wanted to pick places, and I call it a true north. What do I love to do? What will someone pay me for? And what am I great at? Where those three things intersect on a Venn diagram, that's what you ought to chase.
One of the most important leadership qualities. You hire people that are qualified to do the job. And the way I would say it is that you tell them what you want the outcome to be, or create a box so that they know how to play within that box. But then within that box, they need to be able to do however they want to do it so that they feel agency. And I think a lot of leaders are so paranoid, and because of that paranoia, they micromanage people and they don't get the best out of them.
So I have this model I call the leadership champion model. I'm sure you can't trust, you got to earn trust. People have to earn trust, because no, I give trust. Because if you're a leader who says people have to earn your trust, you're not going to develop the depth of relationships with most people. When you start with trust, you're going to actually develop way more depth with way more people. And oh, by the way, will you get burned? He goes, yeah, once in a while, my trust gets me burned. It's way overcompensated by the incremental effort that people give me when I've given them trust and the level of ownership they give me. And, you hear CEOs talk about, why don't people have an ownership mentality? Well, because you don't trust them, right? You put all this kind of secret spy scope stuff on people to analyze if they're really doing what they're supposed to be doing, or you micromanage down, or you have this command and control leadership style, which frankly, especially in 2024, that's not a winning recipe, right? Not a winning recipe. Because you start then with that why are we here? What's the cause we serve? And then you lead to the how. So, the what and the why, what are we going to do? Why are we going to do it? And then you go to the how stage and you collaborate on the how. That's where you trust people. How do you want to get this done? Let them define the how. Now, to your point, you'll put some guardrails in on it. You'll negotiate that. That's a conversation. That's a two-way street.
Talk a little bit about one significant pivot that you had made and the decision process that you went through it.
The first one that I pivoted, I mentioned that everybody in my family every one of the males was a naval officer, as was my sister, by the way, and all of them successful, and they were all pilots. And all I ever wanted to do, I knew when I was 4 years old that I was going to be a Navy pilot. Of course I was. Everybody was. Unfortunately for me, I went to the Naval. I had decided when I was 7 I was going to go to the Naval Academy. I didn't apply to anything else. I'm going to the Naval Academy. That's where I'm going. I'm there, and lo and behold, we find out I'm a mutant, and I don't have eyes that work like the rest of the hatches. The day I committed, the next day, I found out my eyes weren't good, and I would never be a pilot because there was no LASIK back then, and you had to be perfect, and I wasn't, and I knew that I had 8 more years that I had already committed to the Navy, and that was where I was going to be. And the things that I used to laugh about, which were the people who were on ships. Why would anybody go on a ship when you can be a pilot? And I had to pivot and think about that. And ultimately, I spent 6 years as a surface warfare officer going all over the world. It was fantastic. I learned so many things. I got in the Black Sea, stared down the Russians. If you're going to pivot, you have to leave other things. You have to leave the past behind. You can't thinking about wouldn't it be great if I woke up this morning and I could see and I would become a pilot? If you even think about that in any way, you're not going to make it. So that's what I did. I pivoted. I forgot about that dream and I created a new dream. If you don't feel uncomfortable when you're doing those things, you're probably not going to, you're probably not going to be successful. It's like learning to ski. You can't learn how to ski being on the bunny slope the whole time. You have to go up and guess what? You have to fall. And you have to fall hard. And after you fall hard a bunch, you learn how to ski. And so I always looked at it as, okay, I'm going to learn how to ski. It's going to hurt, but at the end, I'll be better.
I think that's a really important lesson for anyone who is listening, because I think a lot of times people just at the downside of losing their current job or having less opportunity now. Instead, I think what you've done is you've always looked at the upside, focus on the upside and say, I'm going to bet on myself, and yes, I'm going to be able to do it. And this is how I'm pivoting, and this is what I'm going to do.
I think that's right. The last pivot I made was 4 years ago. I had been on the operating committee at Citibank Global, Morgan Stanley Global, where I was vice chairman. I'd been on the board at UBS Americas, and I quit. And I quit because I was tired of being in really big places, and I was tired of not having the challenge that I wanted. So I went out on my own. I went from being in this huge global company to a company with 3 people. That was very different. Company with 3 people, no income. And so learning how to take something where there is nothing and creating it as entrepreneurs do. And I'm still in my journey, but every day I wake up, I'm really happy. I'm nowhere near where I want to be, but I wake up every day and say, but it's all about what I can do for other people. And I don't have to worry about 100 people who might want to do it this way and 100 people who want to do it that way. I think an entrepreneur is the best job that you could ever have.
One of your biggest pivot in my view, but maybe you had other ones that were big as well. I remember when you were a senior executive at an asset management company, and you left that position, and you were searching for something else. And we had a lot of conversations at that time, and you were really soul searching, and then you made this pivot. Talk about what that pivot was, and also if you could share some of the fears that you might have had during that process and how you might be able, or how you were able to get over those.
I get a call from my dad, who was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And I thought, okay, I can handle this. I got this. And so I kept spinning all those plates, and I added another one. Then my mom, who I just told you how close we are, called, and she had a massive stroke. And so I had all of these things that were on top of me. And I remember being in South America on a business trip, and I got a call from my dad, and he said, I'm at the hospital, and there was a problem with something with his insurance. And I knew it was something that if I spent enough time on the phone, I could figure it out. So I had a choice to make. Do I get on this flight and get back home to my 3 kids and get on to the million other things I need to do for my job? Or do I miss this flight?
Mm-hmm.
And so it really was a lens that I used to reevaluate what I was doing every day and whether or not it was something that really filled my tank. Because there's a lot of things that you can do to make money. And in that moment, I realized my passions had shifted. I had other priorities. I love work. It's not about like stay at home with my family or be at work. I love what I do. But the way that I was doing it was killing me. I went to my boss at the time, and I said, this is not, I don't think I can give you what you really want. And this is certainly not what I want. And we both deserve better than that. I took some time, and I was really purposeful about what I wanted, and giving that space and that time to myself for a few months to get these things in order really was, and to talk to people like you, was really clarifying to me that I couldn't go back to doing what I was doing before. It wasn't about shifting to a different company, doing the same thing. It was about doing something radically different.
You have these aging parents that you're taking care of. You still have kids that you have to take care of. And then we have these very demanding careers, and we recognize that something has to give and something has to change. I would like you to talk a little bit more about how this might be different or specific if you're a woman. Because I think that a lot of women believe that they can't change because they have these responsibilities that maybe are perceived to be different than men have.
Yeah. Well, I think that corporate America has wisened up to the fact that like women are really critical to their success. And I think that many corporations have changed their policies. I remember when I had my first child, it was during the global financial crisis, and I had to go back to work 2 weeks later. I was not my best version of myself for anybody. And I think that both maternity and paternity leaves have, so I think it's important for dads to be a part of the exciting birth of a child too, and, have those bonding moments. And so I think that corporate America has gotten a lot better. But whenever I first, and this wasn't a stated thing from any of my bosses, but whenever I first got pregnant, and this was after being married for 17 years when I had my first child, I thought, God, if I get pregnant, it's game over. Like, I'm not going to get promoted. I'm not going to get that big accounts. I'm not going to be able to work on that big deal. And so I do think that's better. But I think as a leader too, one of the things that we talk about, and I think, I encourage my male peers to do this. When you're leaving, leave loudly. So if you're leaving because you're going to go to your kid's soccer match, like tell people, goodbye, everybody. It's 4:30. The kid's playing in a big soccer game tonight. I'll be rooting for them from the sidelines, because that lets the next generation know that you can't do that every day, but for special things, you can do that. Or whenever have a sick kid and whatever the reason, I got to take him to the hospital or something, I let people know that, because I think it's important you bring your whole life to work. You may keep it inside, but it's still with you. And I think we have to give some grace to each other.
How do you measure success now compared to earlier in your career? And how do you, ensure that you're not holding on to outdated definitions of that? And I think that's a relation to the example that you said earlier.
And I think my take on that is a little more morose in that, like, death is like a real thing. It's like you are in it. And I used to say the sentence glibly, like, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. I actually say it, and I have to find a way to inflect the tone in that differently, but I'm here for a good time, not a long time. And I'm very aware of that. And I feel like if I've made good use of those 168 hours we're all given every week, or for those that make through the week, it's good. Like, I'm very much more process driven than outcome driven. I'm much more network driven than material driven. I'm much more people driven than that. And I will say, like, having lost, like losing my grandparents 90 hours from each other, like losing Mike and saying goodbye to Rob, like those have been really profound reasons that are like, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah.
And that those are the things that, like, really, like, that's how I evaluate myself.
Right.
A good metric is how much I help people, in the way that I can, right?
Talk a little bit about how following your passions, maybe also felt like taking some significant risks, and how did you push through those moments of doubt when you had them, when you were making those changes in life to follow your passions?
I always think about, like, Billie Jean King's quote, right? Pressure is a privilege. It's a privilege to feel this. And I'm a little bit of a junkie. And so when I feel those moments of, like, scared or that pressure is a privilege. And I'll give it for a second, like, and I'll own up the fact I'm scared and nervous. But then you have to have a moment where you're like, you know what? I'm here for this. Like, let's go. And you just have to, like, hold on to that, that pull, just get through that first part of scare. And then, like, all right, do this. And that's been through multiple parts of my life, and I'm not, there's no guarantee of success. Like, I've been fired from jobs. I've lost jobs. I've lost people, like, not made, but that part is always fun, and it is a privilege, right? And that ranges from multiple things in my life, right? Ranging from, well, what I do every day, like, honestly, raising a fund, I spend every day trying to sell myself, and I'm told about 19 or 29 times, 19 times out of 20 or 29 out of 30. And it's just like, okay, here we go. Let's do it again.